Welcome, everybody. So the question that I've been feeling a lot right now is obviously we need to sell more cars. Traffic is down right across the board at all of your stores, and that's Canada and the US. And we've talked about this extensively going into the middle to now. Yeah, we're right about at the halfway point of Q4. We're maybe a little bit over it being into the 20s. Maybe last weekend would have been the halfway point. And from this point on, going into December, certainly the next distractions that we've talked about before are Black Friday, American Thanksgiving. The Canadian Thanksgiving is now out of the way, and then it'll be the holiday season. And when the weather really starts to turn, right now we're so fortunate, at least in the eastern part of the continent, those of you on the west coast and central states certainly getting some real winter weather, which for us winter lovers, snowmobiles and snowboarders and skiers and ice fishing people alike, it's a welcome change to this autumn-like weather. It's more like the beginning of autumn than it is like the beginning of winter, or getting very close to the beginning of winter. Customers just aren't in the same frame of mind when it comes to their buying decisions and purchasing an automobile. When the winter weather really hasn't hit, it doesn't put that much of a strain on the battery, the electrical system of the vehicle, so there isn't as much of a threat that the vehicle won't start when the cold weather hits. And for those of you in the West, you can certainly chime in and type in the comments that you're getting that right now. Yeah, you're starting to see that traditional traffic. The other part of the equation is a lot of vehicles aren't crashing into each other because the winter weather really hasn't hit for us here in the East. And of course, for all of you in the southern 48 states, of course, this doesn't apply at all whatsoever. So this time of the year, because of Christmas and the holiday season and American Thanksgiving and all the rest of it, becomes rather distracting to our clients, which means the email bell isn't chiming, the phone isn't ringing, and the showroom doors just aren't swinging. And if I need to be the bearer of bad news to draw that to your attention, my apologies to you. But this is really what our system of 3 phases and 9 steps is all about, so that you can create predictable consistency, working your dream job all the way along. If you're struggling right now, maybe you've come off a great month last month, maybe you've come off an even better month the previous month of that, and maybe you came off a terrific summer and a wonderful year, and you're just coming to the reality that, oh my gosh, there's nobody coming in, the front doors aren't swinging, the email bell isn't chiming, the phone isn't ringing like it did. And what is that going to mean for me for the rest of 2024? And what does my planning look like for the beginning of 25 and Q1? And certainly with new government coming into power, as we will start to see and the changes unfold and the plan for the Republicans to take over, all of which are excuses. Yes, they are reality. Yes, there could be some significant changes to various business activities. But at the end of the day, in the automobile business, we really don't change a whole lot. People are driving around, and an average age of an automobile is 16 years old. And you need to know who you're dealing with in order for you to be able to sell more of them. Because at the end of the day, here's the thing, gang. You don't need any more leads. You have the leads that you currently need. If you were to only get 13 leads in the showroom, and that includes telephone and e-leads, as well as those walk-ins, if you had a 9 in 10 closing ratio, if you had a 4 in 5 closing ratio, if you had a 2 out of 3 closing ratio, I hope you're getting the message. You could have 13 leads and sell double digits in 1 month. And that's really what we're talking about here, because it isn't so much that kind of planning which will yield the results that you're looking for. It's the understanding, the investment in yourself, the preparation, and the deliberate activities of understanding who I am trying to sell to. You know, we've talked about this in the past. There are 3 things that you must have. Number 1, you must be the attractive character. That's the most important thing whenever anyone reaches out to your dealership and you are the person that they contact and reach. You need to give them that know, like, trust that they require with the second greatest financial decision that they make in their life, purchasing an automobile. The second thing that you need to have in order for you to be able to get these people is a great story. What is the bait that you use to hook them to buy right now? You know, if your story isn't aligned, if you are meeting with an assertive A-type behavior, and what you're thinking is most helpful and wonderful for these individuals is the deal, because that's what they keep asking for: price, 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 price. And they set an appointment with you to meet at 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and you've taken a client at 10. Now you're making sure that you're going to do everything you possibly can in order to close that deal. Maybe you're dealing with somebody who is an enthusiast, and therefore it's requiring considerably more attention of your time, because these people purchase based on facts, and they're reserved, and their level of information needs to be at an engineering presentation level. And you think to yourself, well, I don't want to be rude and punt them, but you set an appointment with an assertive at 11 o'clock that you know is going to be a low gross, no gross deal, because they've all the way along, any communication they've had with you is, what's the best price? What's the best price? I don't need to see it, drive it. Just give me your best price. And somehow you created enough of a hook to reel them into the showroom. Maybe that is a trade appraisal. Maybe that's a demonstration drive. Maybe that's an opportunity for you to facilitate a perfect presentation for them. And that bait was enough to create an appointment for 11 o'clock to which you are going to be late. When you don't understand the buyer that you are currently dealing with, there is no possible way for you to appeal to their sense of intellect based on the very fact that the most outstanding characteristics that they are particularly interested in having in any kind of a relationship where they know you know what you're doing, and they trust that you recognize that this is the second greatest financial decision made next to buying a house. The commitment is not easy. It lasts months, years, decades for some people. You destroy all of your likability, your attractive character, by being late to the meeting. And it's really easy to tell who these people are. So we'll get into that very shortly. When you have these various behaviors and you need to have these three things working in unison for you, only at that point are you capable of selling at least 1 in 4. You know, that let's aim for that as our goal, to sell 25% of the people that we talk to. So therefore, in order for us to sell 10 vehicles, we need 40 leads, which I think is going to be a lot for a number of you, unless you're living in a large metropolitan area and your dealership is continuing on with an expensive advertising campaign. But here's the thing. In step number 8 of our blueprint in the Six-Figure Manifesto, you will learn very quickly to populate these 40 leads into your prospecting activities, but they don't all come from the showroom, and they don't all come from phone-in, and they don't all come from e-leads. None of that really matters. And this is where I may confuse you a little bit, so please stay with me, because if you don't understand the behavior that you are dealing with, then I could drive 400 leads through our various sales funnels that we utilize and I'm intimately familiar with to your dealership, to specifically you. I could put your name on that sales funnel so they have to deal with you, and you may not even close 10. Sad reality, and that is exactly what is happening, that when we don't invest a significant amount of our effort, resources, and time into these buyer behaviors that do exist, that are hardwired into our DNA. For instance, if you are now, let's go to a different color. If you are trying to sell a talkative, someone who talks twice as much as they listen, 4 times as much as they listen, And I know you, if you're anything like me, you love meeting these individuals. They tell you about every automobile that they've ever owned. They tell you where they've driven those automobiles. They tell you how many children they've raised through those automobiles. They tell you why they're downsizing or upsizing or transitioning to truck or SUV or vice versa. And the conversation is quite enjoyable because you are aligned with respect to the fact that it's on par with what you do. You're an automobile salesperson, you're a power sports salesperson, and these individuals are in your showroom. They're on the telephone, they're emailing you, and you're having this magnificent dialogue and conversation going back and forth with them. However, while you're doing that and the clock is ticking all the way along, going along, and that just keeps going around and around and around, and you decide that the third thing that is most important to everybody, because you may have run into 3 assertive buyers in a row that are very concerned with best price, lowest price, highest trade-in amount, that you now start to focus on the fact that this is only going to cost $8, $12, $22, $32 per day. Or the fact that you're trying to pitch them on a $250, $300, $450, $700 bi-weekly payment. While this information is crucial and absolutely important for you to share with each one of the buyer behaviors at the very beginning of the activities that lead to the sale, the second step, when we focus on budget with talkatives who are champagne taste, beer budget, we will call a spade a spade. They're easy to identify in terms of their clothing. It's dress clothing and it's nice looking. It's probably not pressed. It's probably does not look brand new. It's probably not designer, but it is nice clothing nevertheless. And they're probably driving a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old luxury vehicle with most likely a lot of mileage on it. And this is the normal trade cycle for them, 6, 7, 8 years at a time. And if that is not the case and they're driving a relatively new automobile, it probably has an enormous amount of mileage on it, even though it is young because something changed in their life, in their career, in what have you, and they're recognizing the fact that this vehicle is going to depreciate at an accelerated amount, and so I should get out of it now. And they'll tell you that whole story. And while it is interesting and fascinating, as soon as you move to the finances of it, you turn them off. They don't want to talk to you anymore. And they'll say things like, well, this has been magnificent. You've been wonderful. We had no intention of buying today. What I'm going to do is go home and speak to my spouse, and I'm going to sleep on it. And are you in on the weekend? Because that would be a great time for my spouse and I to come down. Maybe we'll come down with our children. If it's a young person, they're going to come down with their dad and mom. If it's a very young individual, like in their 20s, they've got their first professional job, they're going to come in with grandma or grandpa. Maybe grandma and grandpa is going to help them. Maybe an uncle is going to help them with the down payment in order to achieve the monthly payment that they would like to have. Maybe that family member has said, look, you've got a great job, a very stable job. Why don't you just go out and get yourself a newer vehicle? And of course, when we start talking the dollars of what it is going to cost, this gets into an uncomfortable conversation for them because they want to be driving the Ferraris, the Lamborghinis, and the Jaguars. And the reality is they're going to be driving the Hondas, the Toyotas, the Mazdas, the Nissans, the GM, Ford, and Chrysler product that the lion's share of the automobile buying marketplace is currently driving. Doesn't mean that this is going to be their only automobile. They will move on to another one. But when we don't focus on the logic and the excitement of how they can make this affordable in their own mind, we focus on, hey, what is your budget? Do you get the, I want to think about it. Let me sleep on it. This is the first place I've been to. Now, first place I've been to, and I'm shopping 3 different places, in my opinion, only happens over here at the assertive. So let's talk about that for a second. The reason why the assertive, you cannot close the assertive is because they focus on the cost of what the vehicle will be. They do not want to get emotional about the vehicle because they're a very logical individual. they base their decisions on logic, not maybe so much so as the enthusiast who is very fact oriented. So let me put this into perspective in terms of careers that you may have. And this is the reason why the second activity in those activities that lead to the sale, the second step in our first phase of the manifesto, is so critically important, because when you can create a dialogue and a conversation with people, finding out where they live, how they're going to use the automobile, what life is going to be like when they do go ahead with it, and you discover what kind of career that they're in, can you tailor your dialogue, your thinking of how these individuals make a decision, such as the enthusiast who is fearful of making the wrong decision, who weighs the facts, who believes that as soon as emotion enters into the decision-making practice, then logic goes out the window, and that is a careless thing to do. These people over here are all about the emotion, right? They will rationalize the logic themselves. They will find the down payment. They will find the way to make it affordable, but it's got to be exciting. And with the talkative buyer, you just can't say enough great things about the automobile. There is no downside to the power sport products, snowmobile, ATV, UTV that you sell, let alone car, truck, or SUV that you represent. It's all great, and it's amazing, and it beats the competition out, and you can beat the competition up. You can't beat the competition up with the enthusiast. The enthusiast has done their homework. They have done their research. And in fact, with the enthusiast, if you don't share with them one or two things that are potentially harmful or hurtful about the automobile, then you run the risk of being Pollyanna and treating this enthusiast like a talkative, and therefore they go, this has been great. We are not rushing our decision. We're in the research phase at this point, so we're looking for the next 6 to 8 months to purchase. This time of the year is a great time for us to be looking. The automobile shows will be happening throughout the winter time, the first quarter of the year. And then that will position us very well for maybe an April, May, June purchase when you guys are starting to see the 2026s come along. We'll at that point have some idea of what the 2026s will be, and therefore we'll make our decision then. None of that is true. They have already considered that. They have transcended the steps in order to get here, and therefore you did not share with them two downsides of this vehicle in order for you to mismatch. You want to intentionally mismatch your presentation compared to a talkative in order to win the enthusiasts over and show them how humble you can be. Which, with a listener type behavior, which is absolutely wonderful to work with. However, most automobile salespeople overstep their boundary. They speak beyond what the listener is actually looking for because they misinterpret the listener's politeness for being interested in what we say. They are, in fact, looking for, similar to the enthusiast, nothing is perfect. Every single automobile, every single mechanical entity has a shortcoming. And this is the reason why, and I'm going to challenge a lot of you with this, feedback, specific 5-star feedback on products in general, let alone websites, let alone services, let alone training and so on, in my opinion, is really quite innate. I'm going to say innate instead of useless, because it's the interpretation of the individual that is receiving that product. So if everybody gives Trident chewing gum a 5-star rating and Wrigley's spearmint gum a 3-star rating, then don't you ask yourself, like, why would that be the case? With Wrigley's, it's sweet, it's flavorful, it's bubbly, it's larger than a Trident stick of gum. I get it, the Trident is more aimed at preventing cavities and there isn't any sugar in it, and technically it would be healthier for you. I don't know. All of those chemicals that simulate sugar, I don't know how that benefits us or hurts us in any way. But my point, for the purpose of illustration, is that No two customers are the same. And while this customer believes that sugar is terrible for us, this customer believes that taste is important for them. Similar to the lifestyle activity, with listeners, they are not so much knowledge based as they are trust based, as they are diligent in their decision making capability, but they're also, they really emphasize an enormous amount of decision making, especially high ticket items like this, from an evaluation perspective. Are you really as likable, knowledgeable, and trustworthy as what you present? And this is where most automobile salespeople fail, average, ordinary automobile salespeople, because again, they talk themselves right out of a sale because the listener listens twice as much as they speak. Now, where I find most of the mistakes happen is that we don't know who we necessarily have. But you should, because these people operate fast and these people operate slow, which means they make decisions slowly, which means they make decisions deliberately, which means they probably walk slowly, which means they speak slowly, which means you have either an enthusiast or a listener. If they are not asking questions, is it that they are really riveted to your presentation, or that they don't, by traditional behavior, growing up in an environment where they just were comfortable listening, observing, and watching. And when that environment became participant interactive, they became more engaged by sharing with us what they like and what they dislike so that they can get what they want. Because at the end of the day, every single one of these purchasers are going to buy what they want. That's the reason why I can be so confident, so certain, put so much certainty under my feet with the statement, every shopper is a buyer, waking up every single morning saying to myself, every shopper is a buyer unquestionably. And I must be emphatic about this with all of you, is that every single one of these shoppers are going to buy. Either they're going to continue driving the vehicle that they currently have, which is probably making payments on that current vehicle that they've got, which means they just purchased back into the plan of keeping their automobile and driving that one, as opposed to what they actually set out to do today, which would be to come in and purchase an automobile from you and love driving and owning that brand new vehicle. So when you start to pattern the cadence at which they walk, the cadence at which they speak, and then we add into that these people see the world as friendly, and they're easy to deal with, and they're polite, and they're cooperative, then you will gravitate to these particular buyer profiles. Now, here's the problem. No two customers are the same. You could have in a spousal relationship, in just a friendship relationship, in a family relationship. So you've got the young individual that's bringing grandfather to have a look at the vehicle. You've got the young individual bringing mom or dad. You've got anybody bringing in their spouse, their best friend, their life partner. You've got any one of these individuals bringing in their mechanic and their advisor, in other words. So we need to identify, based on the clothing that they're wearing, who they are. With achievers, it's going to be new, nice, and expensive. So you're going to, you can tell in 2 seconds flat exactly what they're wearing. And it reminds me of a story of a guy that I used to sell with. Early on in my career, there was this fella that when we went to the dealership, you'd get there as early as you possibly could in the morning because our up rotation system was first in, first serve. So I would arrive long before the dealership. And once I learned this tactic, I would arrive long before the dealership opened so that I was in line to be able to get one of the earliest, if not the very first prospect that came in, because those people that arrive first thing in the morning obviously are trying to get this done and over with. And this is a very task-oriented individual. The relationship people are sleeping in and going out to breakfast, and then they're going to pop by the dealership. And of course, if we have exactly what they're looking for, then they will capitalize on it and they'll take it. Anyhow, this guy would pass on shopper after shopper after shopper after shopper. And so it reminded me of something years ago when I'm facilitating this material and I developed this technology And then I'm thinking of that story, and I'm thinking of how Bruce was his name, would do such an incredible job of determining who was a buyer and who wasn't. Well, at the end of the day, he really didn't do that great a job of determining who was a buyer and who wasn't. What he was doing was profiling the individuals that he did very well with. And his shortcoming was, at this time of the year, when traffic was down, he would sell fewer vehicles because he only thought that this particular individual profile was a real buyer. At any time or in any place, he only determined that this was the only, and that's why he would pass on prospect after prospect. When I learned this technology and I watched what he was doing, and I had that horrible month where I didn't sell anything at all, I questioned everything that I was doing. I questioned whether this industry was right for me, whether I'd picked the correct career. And remember, I had gone to Northwood University. I have my degree from Northwood, 4 years, the automotive business program there. That is what I was structured for. That was what my plan was. I wanted to be a dealer principal in the worst possible way. I knew I had to sell automobiles first. When I had that first horrible month, it really made me question my career, my objectives, my goals, because I just couldn't seem to close anybody. But when I recognized that looking through the portfolio of clients that I had in the previous month and the previous quarter, I was doing what Bruce was doing. I was selecting the kind of customer that I knew I could have a positive relationship and generate the know, like, and trust badge of honor, giving them the hooks, leveraging the bait that I have for them in order to buy with my most attractive, irresistible offer. What I recognized was that no two customers are the same. They're each individually different. Now, this is just a brief pattern, selecting these 4 different behaviors. When you mix the 2 behaviors, you start to recognize even 3 behaviors, right? So it works like this. You could have these 3. You could have these 3 going together. This is what I learned through intense study, an enormous amount of testing, really profiling to the point where on the worksheet that we had, I would add the behavior types that I have identified as the assertive, the talkative, the listener, and the steadiness. You will see other training programs that list it as a comparison to animals. This is, I think, the Labrador. This is the Labrador Retriever. This is the eagle. This is the lion. This is another one. And at the end of the day, there are physical metaphors to help you really understand what we're trying to portray as teachers, and so that you can take this information, because information without action is innate. It's merely entertaining. And I'm hoping I'm entertaining you, but this certainly isn't stand-up comedy, so I'm not expecting a clap or an enormous amount of laughter. What I discovered by finding out these profiles that I can help you with right now, so that you don't need 400 leads in order to sell 10 vehicles this month, let alone 15 and 18 and 20 and 25 and into 40, is that you cannot go across the axis. So if you are a particular behavior, and this is one of the activities that we do if you're part of the manifesto, and I will put a link below to it. So if you want to talk to me more about the manifesto, the 6-figure manifesto, and getting on board to go through our 3 phases and only 9 steps that have 3 tiny little actions with each that will absolutely, unquestionably, assuredly get you to double-digit sales in any month with predictable consistency, because that's my goal for you. Predictable consistency. Your goal can be 10, 20, and 30 vehicles per month. Your goal can be 8, 9, 12, 15, $100,000 per month in income, like my good friend Glenn has, who has been a part of this system for over 15 years. The bottom line is that when you recognize that you cannot go across the graph, when you know what type of buyer behavior you personally are from a seller's perspective, then you can chameleon yourself appropriately to the correct behavioral style. Remember, it's a behavioral style. It's not a personality. Personalities, and don't ever do a test where someone says, this is a personality test, we're going to evaluate your personality. Personalities are part of our DNA. very difficult for us to change our personality. If someone is sharing with you, we're going to do an assessment of your personality so that you can change your personality to be more successful with the various buyer types. That individual, that teacher, that trainer does not know what they're talking about at all. The only thing that you can change, well, I guess if you're a con artist, you could change your personality. It is extremely difficult. It would require an enormous amount of training at your end. You would need to dive into neurolinguistic processing in order to have any level of success being trustworthy by changing your personality. All we need to do for us in order to generate the Know, Like, and Trust badge of honor is adjust our behavior to meet and match that behavior of the individual that we are selling to. There are some magnificent programs on the marketplace, but this is the only one that deals specifically with automobile sales and power sports sales, because this is all I know. This is all I've ever done. And I wanted to bring this to you because this time of the year, the lion's share of the requests that I receive, and watch my other video last week on leveraging apps and technology, because this applies to leveraging apps and technology, especially as you integrate it into any kind of advertising campaign that you're doing, be it with Facebook or with social media in general. Facebook, I would encourage you, and YouTube would encourage you to take that direction the most. You need to consider how you're talking to each one of these buyers in that particular post. You could even go so far as in your spearing strategy, only address assertive type behaviors, only address talkative style behaviors, only address listeners, and only address enthusiasts. And that changes your presentation that you're leveraging on any one of those platforms, that you can leverage artificial intelligence. We'll walk you through, we'll share with you the chatbots that we've specifically customized and constructed for the automotive retail business to help you achieve the greatest level of penetration, closing rate that you can have with any buyer walking into your showroom, calling you on the phone, or emailing you. Look, the one thing that I would agree with everyone that is espousing to know the car business, maybe not as well as you and I, having been a car dealer, still a registered independent now car dealer to this day, all of this stuff, tried and tested out there on the showroom floor. The one thing that I will agree with everybody is the biggest change of all is in buyer behavior. We're getting far more e-lead and telephone calls, initiating the relationship in order for us to be able to get them into the showroom. Obviously, bringing them into the showroom is a wonderful thing. It has its caveats for these two types of buyer behavior, and your sales manager is probably not speaking about this. Very few, the average ordinary automobile sales trainer has no clue at all, and then very few other teachers like myself putting the time and effort into the psychosis of sales know anything about it. But these two right here actually are not at an advantage coming into the showroom. And the reason being is that the confused mind always says no. And so when you bring your assertive or enthusiast type of buyer into the showroom, you confuse them with the other number of offerings that are available there. These two buying behaviors, albeit get along very well, are very similar. They see the world as a little bit more critical, like you are going to take advantage of them, and you're not going to tell them what your best deal is, and you don't know your information. Of course, they ask some critical questions, which solidifies that belief. But you can turn that all around when you recognize the kind of behavior that you've got, that you don't want to be late to appointments, that you want to be firm on your price. You're very aware, and you know how to overcome the objection of best price with them so that you can win them over. You definitely need to know your product knowledge and facilitate presentation in such a capacity that's absolutely magnificent, which will help you sell the lifestyle that talkatives are looking for and that listeners gravitate to. Start to open up, start to contribute in the conversation by matching exactly what they're looking for, matching with differentiation, as I call it, showcasing some of the shortcomings that we have, and then of course the mismatchers in general, so that you present yourself in the most attractive capacity by being humble. Nobody builds a perfect product. Everybody builds an excellent product, but no product is perfect, as we well know, with stop sales, limited sales, recalls and campaigns that exist throughout the industry with every single manufacturer. You just need to present in such a capacity that this really makes sense for the buyer, and they will say yes instantly and quickly. You'll hear enthusiast buyers say, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like purchasing this automobile. As listeners will say, purchasing right now is a good thing for me to do. You'll hear them equally say, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like right now I should hold off. That's probably a follow-up call. Now, we haven't even touched on follow-up. We'll talk about that in prospect harvesting a couple of sessions in. So look for that video as well. Get ready to attend that live session. And as always, love your comments. Send in a comment. Had a comment on Instagram from a student of over 20 years ago. I haven't seen him in ages, going back to the days when I did Saturn training for General Motors. And he was most complimentary of the training. I take it he's not in the business anymore. So if you are watching, thank you so much for those comments, those kind comments. And it would be fantastic to get you on a podcast. If anybody would like to be on my podcast, reach out to me. I'll just see if you fit the requirements appropriately. We generally reserve it for clients only so that you can see the people actually getting the results that I'm espousing you can achieve by following our one system of 3 phases and 9 steps to achieve your goal of predictable consistency, hitting your targets every single month, all the time. So go back and watch some of the old videos. Watch this very next video that I'll share with you on leveraging apps and technology, where you can utilize this information to have greater traction with your social media, bringing those people in so you've got the leads. And now, because you're targeting this behavioral style throughout your advertising efforts, you can just be yourself when they walk in. You don't have to worry about the clothing they're wearing. I'll leave you with this. Assertives have expensive clothing, expensive jewelry, driving expensive automobiles. Very easy to identify. Probably the easiest in the entire bunch. Most frustrating in the entire bunch because it's all about price. The talkatives, champagne taste beer budget. So they're probably driving in a vehicle that was nice, that isn't so nice anymore, has a lot of mileage on it. And don't worry so much about the price. Find the lifestyle that they were looking for. That's what will close the deal. The listener listens twice as much as they talk, so you got to get them open up. You got to get them talking. You got to find out where they live, what they do. These are the socially conscious people. These are the ones that recycle. These are the ones that are wearing Banana Republic and its wrinkled clothing and Birkenstock shoes, and they're gajillionaires. They've made lots of money, probably .com sort of things, but that doesn't, I don't want to pigeonhole all of those careers just into this one profile. It is just a very easy way to identify the behavior that you've got. And you will love dealing with listeners because they do a ton of listening. Don't mistake their politeness for being interested in what you have to say. And then, of course, the enthusiast, the most frustrating one in the entire bunch that you will deal with, because they want an engineering level presentation of the automobile, demonstration, answer all their questions, very pointed and difficult questions too. And they're probably doctors, dentists, lawyers, engineers, policemen, firefighters, police women as well. I shouldn't just say policemen, paramedic staff, doctors, as mentioned earlier. They fall perfectly into that category. Very fearful of making the wrong decision. Not fearful of making a decision. They're all fearful of making a decision because it's expensive. It's very difficult to retract it and turn it around. But they're fearful of making the wrong decision, as maybe has been the situation in the past. But because they are not necessarily any one of these demographic is an achiever or not an achiever. They're all an achiever in their own right. This particular one was an achiever from an early age in life, being very factual, test-oriented, recognized by our traditional education system as being an achiever, and therefore challenged to do a little bit more, are very fact-based. And that is what challenges you, because most salespeople wind up over here on the talkative side of the equation, and we hear it when I talk to you, when you talk to others, and say, how did you get into automobile sales? Well, I've got the gift of the gab. I really can talk to people easily. I like to talk a whole lot. The things that make you great also create your demise. So keep that in mind when you are trying to make the very best of this month. And now that we're well over halfway through the month, now it is time to put the throttle down as hard as you possibly can, and then hold yourself back a little bit, grab a hold of the steering wheel, make sure you're planning those turns, pull back a little bit on the reins, which would technically be slowing you down in order to be able to sell 10 units by recognizing that no two customers are the same. Again, I will put a link in the comments below. Look for that to be able to book a call with me. And I will share all of these details and so much more, and then ask you a few questions. You can ask me some pointed questions about the system and the phases and the steps in order to make sure it's something you're looking for. I'm going to be asking you questions, see if you're a good fit for the program, because we don't take everybody. We must be selective. Your success is our success. And so we really want you to commit to absolutely doing it. We do have some spaces available and spaces open, as we've had some students graduate throughout this entire quarter. And of course, as always, we are never too busy for your referrals. You can get this for the whole dealership. You can get this individually for yourself. You can actually even get the steps, the 9 steps individually. We've had lots of people take advantage of simply leveraging apps and technology. And then, of course, purchasing harvesting prospects as well, because that works part and parcel of filling their pipeline, so their funnel is always dripping out sales down at the bottom. So watch the last video. I will post it right here as the next video for you to watch, leveraging those apps, because you just cannot overcome obscurity any better than anybody else. So be sure to keep that message constantly being blasted. You are top of mind with everyone you speak to. Talk to you again real soon. Bye-bye.